So how could this have happened? We've all heard the terrible, awful, really bad, no good news. President Trump is a reality. We're about to enter a new age of fascism, and SJWs and other assorted lefties have been losing their fucking minds, burning flags in cars, hyperventilating, and causing the Canadian immigration website to crash. Left leaning pundits have been throwing tantrums and spewing hate at the identity groups who betrayed all that is right and good by voting in literally Hitler. I'm not going to deny that I take a certain satisfaction that this event has pissed off all the right people. Sweet, savage Schadenfreude. And I won't say I wasn't worried that Hillary might win. And no, I have never been an anyone but Hillary person. I genuinely like Trump. I think he'd be a decent president. Maybe not the best president ever, but I think he'll do all right. And a lot of the reason I think that is because I watched a lot of the debates during the primaries and the presidential race, and I watched a lot of his rallies beginning to end. That is, I didn't just read what the mainstream media reported about him, I actually watched and listened to him. When the mainstream quoted him, I'd go watch the video they'd taken the quote from, and frequently it was either isolated from a broader context, of what he'd said, or it was a statement about an individual or a subgroup, Rosie O'Donnell or Mexican criminals, that was projected onto an entire identity group, like women and Mexicans, or examined through the lens of the least charitable interpretation possible, like the recent revelation that he'd called Veterans Week. Now, why did I do this? Why did I constantly fact check? Well, why do you think? Could it be because the same media that was decrying Trump as racist, misogynist, homophobic, white supremacist, bigoted, has portrayed people like me the exact same way? I mean, it's not like the SJWs can call me a rapist, but, they call me a rape apologist often enough. And then there was the violence at the rallies and the media spin on that. The odd time a Trump supporter was violent, it was blamed on Trump's violent, bigoted, and hateful rhetoric. But when Trump protesters got violent, well, that too was blamed on Trump's violent, bigoted, and hateful rhetoric. And yet the media couldn't get enough of spinning everything Trump said as violent, bigoted, and hateful, even when it wasn't. And so I had to wonder, is the media promoting this violence? I read and I heard how the mainstream liberal media and Democrats on social media had labeled Trump a fascist. Now, don't get me wrong. A populist who runs for office through the democratic process may become a fascist for sure, but please consider the following. Fascists don't tend to want to dismantle federal mandates regarding how kids are educated the way Trump wants to do with Common Core. They don't tend to advocate greater educational choice for parents, such as charter schools and support for homeschooling. They actually tend to want to implement a national centralized mandatory educational programming so that the government can determine what information kids are exposed to and what information they're not. Fascists don't tend to want to uphold states' rights and limit the power of the federal government. They generally want to consolidate power federally and strip state and provincial or municipal governments of autonomy. And fascists certainly don't vigorously defend the rights of individuals to freedom of expression and self-defense, gun rights, the two most important individual rights when it comes to protecting individuals against abuse of state power. They generally want arms only in the hands of a mobilized military under their control, and they want civilians to be at their mercy in terms of policing freedom of expression. Fascists don't tend to want to impose term limits. They generally want to abolish them. Fascists tend to get into power through a subversion of the democratic process, and once there, they begin dismantling constitutional protections or sometimes tear up the Constitution altogether. Nothing I have heard Trump say indicates he has done or wants to do any of these things. In fact, he was the first person of any real note to call out the DNC on its shenanigans during the primaries. He made insinuations of a rigged system that had unfairly and undemocratically squeezed Bernie Sanders out, insinuations that seem to have borne more fruit than the DNC would ever want to admit. That sounds like defending the democratic process from the upper echelons of the perhaps misnamed Democratic Party who were attempting to subvert it. And as for how this could have actually happened, that answer is obvious to anyone who doesn't gobble up the pre-packaged, pureed pig swill the mainstream media force feeds us, and then obediently shit out the desired result on demand. A vote for Trump is a vote for misogyny because he called Rosie O'Donnell a bad word, or called Clinton a nasty woman instead of a nasty person. Well, that's just not an argument. I've been called a misogynist too many times to swallow that kind of accusation at face value. A vote for Trump is a vote for racism and xenophobia because he's concerned about Islamic terrorism and worried about Mexican criminals setting up shop in the U.S. using the decent, hard-working, mostly law-abiding, undocumented Mexicans as a Kevlar vest. Yeah, that's also not an argument. Countries have borders for a reason, yo. And to see all the asshole virtue signalers who tweeted "Je suis Charlie" now scream Islamophobia because someone suggests that taking ISIS at their word, believing them when they claim they're sneaking operatives into the West among legitimate refugees and that we need to adjust for that, to claim that that's all hatred of Muslims. What the ever-loving fuck? You know, I was sitting in my boyfriend's favorite barbershop about a year ago watching him get a hot shave and listening to the Lebanese barber Abram and the Arab Muslim men who drop in to sit on his 3 leather couches and drink coffee and talk, discuss their worries about radical Islamic terrorism making its way into Canada via the exploitation of our welcoming attitude toward refugees. Are they Islamophobes now too? And frankly, I've been accused hither and yon of Islamopologia because I'm not willing to uncritically swallow the blanket accusation of Muslim institutional misogyny. Yet at the same time, I'm not going to be convinced Trump is an Islamophobe for expressing concerns and worries that are expressed all the time by moderate Muslims I have met here in Canada, concerns and worries that I share myself. As someone who's been called every name in the book that ends with "ist," I'm getting rather sick of it. It's like some fucked up game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the blue eyes white dragon delivers whatever accusation of whatever ism is the most politically expedient at the moment. No discussion necessary, just slap the card down, scream, "Misogyny accusation attack!" and you've won the argument. No, you haven't. You have not won the argument. At best, all you've done is silence someone. And by silencing them the way you have, by shaming rather than convincing them, all you've done is harden their opinion. If an accusation of misogyny, racism, homophobia, or xenophobia is the only counter-argument you have, then you have no counter-argument. Anyone who likes Trump better than Hillary is a misogynist is not an argument. It never was, and neither is Trump is literally Hitler. And while I've seen tons of reasoned arguments coming from Trump supporters, and let's not be coy here, sometimes those reasoned arguments had more to do with objecting to Hillary than supporting Trump, all I have seen from the Clinton camp is fear-mongering, accusations of various isms, and bizarre deflections from Clinton's own glaring flaws. Somehow, according to the media, Trump saying his statements in the Access Hollywood video were locker room talk. That's an obvious lie, and he's obviously covering up the fact that he's a sex offender who walks up to random women all the time, shoves his tongue down their throats, making them choke on Tic Tacs probably, and grabs them by the pussy before so much as saying hello. Yet Clinton's assertion that the Russians are responsible for the DNC emails released by WikiLeaks, that's just the end of the story. Nothing more to see here, despite the fact that I don't think I ever heard her or anyone else make a single claim that the emails themselves were faked. Same with Project Veritas. You can't trust O'Keefe's videos because he once broke the law to get the same kind of dirt on someone else. Don't look at the emails themselves, her supporters said. Look only at the malicious intentions of the people I'm telling you leaked them. Ignore the message and instead dismiss the messenger. Don't look at the videos themselves, her supporters said, because the guy who shot them used subterfuge to get the footage, and therefore he can't be trusted. Ignore the evidence and instead dismiss the process by which it was gathered. I'm sorry. I would no more dismiss a video of a man killing his wife in bed, based on the fact that the kid who filmed it was burglarizing their house at the time, than I would dismiss the emails or the videos that no one in the Clinton campaign or the DNC has ever actually disavowed as being faked. The people showing you the evidence are bad or mean or even criminal is not an argument against the evidence, snowflakes. And always, always, always the accusations that questioning equals misogyny or racism or Islamophobia or homophobia or transphobia or xenophobia or triskaidekaphobia or whatever obia or ism is the most politically expedient at that moment. And when that stopped working, then it was accusations that critics of Clinton were tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, never mind Hillary's constant assertions of, it was the Russians that did it. And when that stopped working, it was the constant, incessant, hysterical drumbeat characterization of Trump as literally Hitler. A vote for Trump is a vote for fascism. And when that didn't work, it was the blanket accusation that anyone who would ever vote for Trump is a stupid, uneducated hick. You guys were so self-absorbed and so concerned with fitting in with the right-thinking people and looking morally upright and all the rest of that. Well, you just couldn't even conceive of the existence of a type of person on whom that kind of social leverage wouldn't work. Don't you want to look like one of the smart people? Don't you want to not look like a dummy and a rube? Well, if you vote for Trump, you're just dumb and everyone will know it. And the mainstream media that clearly favored Clinton, that obsessed over every potentially problematic thing Trump said or did over the last 20 years, while brushing off the WikiLeaks and the private email server and the Clinton Foundation accepting huge sums of money from foreign governments and the fact that Goldman Sachs and the Lehman Brothers and countless other one-percenters were listed as Hillary's top donors. Well, never mind. She's still a candidate for the little guy, for the oppressed, for all you downtrodden rubes and hicks who are so dumb you just don't know how to vote in your own interest. No. Listen to us, university-educated, pampered, privileged elites, or else you're stupid and bigoted. How the fuck did that work for you assholes? None of you have ever been able to comprehend the existence of people like me. You can call me every name in the book, from racist to sexist to Islamophobe to Islam apologist to homophobe to some dumb waitress with no education. Go ahead. Throw it at me. I'll look at you, university-educated snobs whose only counter-argument is an accusation and an imputation of malice, and I'll see you for exactly what you are. Conformists who seek social status through compliance and credentialing. People who learned what to think in university instead of how to think. People with enormous privilege who never tire of telling the unwashed masses to check theirs. People who somehow believe Trump is a fascist when that description more closely fits Hillary, given the DNC's subversion of its own democratic process to win her the primaries. People who are losing their motherfucking minds over the fact that one of the actual really and for true boys from Brazil actually really and for true got elected to the highest office in America and arguably the most powerful office in the world. Nuclear war is inevitable because that's what the Nazis would have done, and Trump is the second coming of Hitler after all. It'll be France first and then the rest of the world. You're all running around like Chicken Little, screaming that the sky is falling and acting the exact same way you predicted those vile, evil, bigoted Trump supporters would react if he lost the election. Rioting, burning flags and cars, shooting people, and declaring the results of the election to be illegitimate. And you still have no fucking clue why you lost. It's not because Trump supporters are bigots. It's not because Trump supporters are stupid, uneducated hicks. It's not because Trump supporters are too dumb to know what's good for them. And it's not because Trump supporters are fascists who hate everyone who doesn't look like them. Trump is not the devil. Trump is not literally Hitler. Trump is not a fascist. And whatever happens within the next 4 years, and no, I'm not predicting nuclear strikes against France, your response to this unexpected turn of events will only solidify the belief of Trump voters that they did the right thing. After all, in doing so, they pissed off all the right people, didn't they?
Even tarantulas aren't immune from an ambush. This centipede is a predator.